Okay. Yeah, recording now, and you have the access also.
You won't believe I've been speaking muted. Okay, you're welcome to Poshem Technology once again, Mr. Paul. And we've just concluded the first track, which is the AZ104, the Azure Administrative or Administrator track. And we are on the second lap, which is actually the main and the final lap, which is the DP300. Okay. And so when you talk about DP300, we are talking about administering Microsoft Azure SQL solution. Now, there was actually a name change, but not a code change. Okay. Now, the name change was administering relational database on Azure. That was the previous name, but now I think they are trying to streamline it that when you are talking about the P300, you're actually talking about the cloud as a whole. So that's just the major concept. So today that we are starting this new track, we'll be looking at what the course entails. We'll be looking at some of the prerequisites and what we need to have. And I think I'm actually very, very happy that you are a seasoned database person or database administrator. So I can tell you up front, there are some certain things we will not be teaching you. That's the truth. And you'll be the one teaching us. Okay. Now, when I say that, don't be scared. Okay, because there are some things you already know. So we'll just touch it, but we'll be talking more about the Azure related stuff when it comes to the database part of it. So,
okay.
And so, like I said, we'll be looking at some of what we'll be looking at in the course of this training. Okay. And the first thing, if you look at the prerequisite from Microsoft, okay, it is believed that the person is supposed to be, you are supposed to have a professional experience. And when we talk about the professional experience, that means in terms of the on-prem database administration, you are supposed to have that experience. And when you are talking about the Azure experience, you're expected to know in order to be able to have a sound and a better understanding of this particular one. You are supposed to, even if you don't know anything, you are supposed to have the Azure fundamentals, okay? And you are supposed to know the Azure data fundamental. But I can guarantee you, because I remember the last time or in one of the previous classes, that you started the right way by going through the Azure admin route. Okay, so you have gone beyond the fundamental. Okay, you've gone beyond the fundamental, but with the knowledge, I can tell you that you will find this one a smooth sailing. So what are we going to be looking at? The first one, we actually have 7 modules. Okay, and when we talk about those modules, there are some other things embedded within it. So I'll just quickly run through the modules so that if there's any question, we'll answer it. Then we'll jump into the purpose of why we are here today. Now, before let me do it this way, but let me just actually mention some certain things. Now, I don't need to ask if you have your SQL server. I'm sure definitely you should have that, because that is one of the tools we are going to use. Okay, and another one, this is the first one, and another one, let me confirm if I have it here. Azure Data Studio. Okay, good. This is another one. I'll just open this. So for this one, Microsoft, they are trying to, I won't use the word refurbish or bring up some new things. Okay, so for this one, we'll just show you how you can also connect with it. Now, I won't say SQL server management it is still in vogue, okay? Because I'm sure by now they should have the SQL 2022 machine, if I'm right. But these are some of the tools we are going to be using, okay? How you can also connect your database using these particular tools, okay? And we'll be working with some certain database, okay? And that one you can get it, but we can still create a GitHub. I think Adventure works by now. I'm sure you're 100% familiar with that. Adventure Work database, okay? And there's also this other one. There's this other one, Adventure Work DM, what's this one? Data warehouse, yeah, okay? So I'll just share these two links with you on the chat.
Okay.
You can download it. So you can just have those ones ready. So even the Adventure Work, so you can get everything from this link. So just try and get those ones ready. So let me drop it on the chat. Come up. Oh, my bad. So for this, so I'm dropping it on the chat. You need the Adventure Work backup. You also need the Adventure Work. Okay. Okay. You also need the Azure Data Studio. Okay. So you can get all those ones. So once you have them, we can talk about how to go about installing them. So let me move on with what we have. So for that, those are some of the tools we'll definitely need in order to be able to work with this particular course. So for the first one, we'll be looking at Azure Database Administrator, and under those particular module, we are going to look at the data platform rules. There are different data platform. You know, when it comes to data, we have different rules, especially under Microsoft. We'll look at how you can set up an SQL server within the Azure VM, and we'll also look at how you can set up Azure SQL database, okay? And we'll also look at what they call, these are the three different flavor, let me put it that way. You can have an SQL server within an Azure VM. You can have an Azure SQL database. You can have an Azure SQL managed instance. Now, let me say this managed instance is very, very, very expensive, okay? But when we won't get there, we'll talk more. So for the second module, we'll be talking about how you can plan and implement data platform resources, okay? How you can deploy, you know, from what we have done here, some of these fall under the Iaas. By now, I'm sure the Iaas, the Paas, you should be familiar with this technology, okay? So I'm not going to go into details. Okay, good. So now you can, I'm sure by now you can see reason why the AZ-104 was actually a must. So for the third one, we'll talk about how you can secure your environment, because apart from being able to deploy all these resources within the cloud or on Azure, okay, recall we've talked about authentication and authorization, and we talked about Microsoft Entra ID, okay? So when it comes to your database, how can you also configure the authentication? How can you configure authorization? And how do you set up security when you talk about data that is at rest? How do you set up security when you talk about data that are in transit? And how do you, for sensitive data, how can you make them to be compliant? Okay. So basically, this is more like you securing that your database that you have set up on Azure. Okay. Now, the next one has to do with monitoring and optimization. And if you remember, I think that should be either module 10 or module 9, Azure Monitor. So now for your database, how do you want to monitor them? What are some of the baseline and how do you monitor performance? Okay, what are some of the performance issues? So when it comes to this one, so please get ready to answer questions on this one, because this is even what you do on-prem, but the only beauty is that you can also make use or integrate them with Azure and get a better Azure Monitor and get a better or a much more clarified, but even within the SQL management application itself, of course, you can see some of these things. Now, we'll also talk about optimizing query performance, okay? And when we talk about this is basically what you do on-prem too, okay? All your query plans and the rest of them. So like I told you, there are some of these things we will only, anything that has to do with the Azure part of it, we'll just tell you because you're already familiar with them, okay? So that is why. it is always better, sincerely, for somebody that is coming from the on-prem to the cloud. When you go that way, it makes your life easier because there are some already known things or skills or knowledge that you already have. So it makes your learning of the cloud platform or setting up these resources within the cloud much more easier. And even when you talk about an hybrid environment, it makes your life easier because the simple truth about it all is once you're able to connect either your SSQL, SSMS, or your Azure Data Studio, it is as if you are working on your normal database on your on-prem. That is just it. The major thing is you want to connect it. Instead of the database being on-prem, instead of the server, SQL server being on-prem, it is actually in the cloud. But once you connect your SSMS, okay, every other thing you do is the same, or let me say majorly or mostly the same thing, okay? So for 6, we'll be looking at automation of tasks, okay? How you set up scheduled tasks, extended event. And like I told you, some of these things are things that are actually not new to you, okay? So remember that you also be sharing some of these things for us to know that, okay, this thing, of course, you're a master of your game. You already know how to go about this thing. So for module 7, which is the final one, we'll talk about plan and how you can implement a high availability and disaster recovery environment. Okay, so for this case, we'll be talking about Azure, because I know for on-prem, you talk about setting up high availability cluster, all those things. And so we'll get to know more about it. And we'll also talk about database backup and recovery. So before we jump into what we have today, let me just give you, if you have any room for question, so you can feel free to ask.
Oh, no, nothing on my head for now.
Okay, Instructor Joyful, any contribution from your end?
Not for now. It just it's just the syllabus we just talked about, and it's just something we've done. Like we coming out from part of it is for what we learned from AZ 104, so it's not looking strange.
Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so do you mind sharing your screen? Let me just go ahead with the explanation.
Yeah, you can see the screen, right?
Not yet up.
Really? Let me stop sharing and share again.
Oh, I thought I was the one sharing.
I have already stopped your screen.
Oh my good God. Okay,
I
okay.
stopped
So you
your
can go.
screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me go again. Yeah, but you can still stop sharing
No, I can
yours
see it.
because
Okay, let me see. So you can just go to the PowerPoint. Okay. I think you are the one sharing. I was thinking I was the one.
Nah. Okay. So here we go. Okay. You got the screen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so you can. Okay, so this is just a high overview. If you see, this is a high overview of the 7 modules we've talked about. Okay, so you have the introduction, blah blah blah, just like so. This is detailed one, and like I told you, this is basically what we'll be looking at. So, but let's just go to module 1 straight up. Let's start from there. Okay. Just move on. Okay, good. So let me start from here. Now, remember the first thing we talked about, that we will be talking about the different rules when it comes to Microsoft Data Platform rules. Okay. Now, they are different. Of course, by now, I will not ask you what is data, and I will not tell you what is data. That is the truth, because this is more of an I won't use the word advanced class, and you've been working with data, and every one of us, we know what data is. Even taking Poshem as an example, okay, you talk about the instructors, we have names, we have different courses that we take, okay? So all those things bundled together, we could call them data, or maybe in terms of the instructor. Now, when you talk about within the Azure space, one of the data roles, yes, is the Azure Database Administrator. And if I'm telling you what a database administrator does, it's like me telling you what you do on a day-to-day activity. But since it is part of what we are looking at, I'll still just go and, try and just give you a simple overview. Now, from what we have on the slide, it talks about the administrator or the DB administrator is somebody that implements, they manage anything, any operation that has to do with, okay, I'll just, since we are talking about Azure, okay, so it is more of cloud, that cloud native is very, is a keyword there. It talks about implementing, it talks about managing anything operational aspect of cloud native and hybrid data platform. And those data platform solutions are actually what? Built on Microsoft Azure data services and Microsoft SQL Server. Now, if you look at the keyword I'm bringing out here, we are talking about the cloud native and we are talking about the hybrid. So for the cloud native, you are talking about Azure or Microsoft Azure data services. And for the hybrid, you are talking about the Microsoft SQL Server. So bringing both combination or bringing both services into play, that is what the Azure Database Administrator, they work with, or their major day-to-day function. Like I said, if there's any question, please feel free to just stop me or just tell me there's a question and we move on, okay? Now, for the other roles that we'll talk about, we have what they call the Azure Data Engineer, we have the Azure Data Analyst, we have the Azure Data Scientist, and we have the Azure Artificial Intelligence Engineer. Now, let me ask a quick one. Out of all these other roles that are listed, is there anyone you are not familiar with? And is there anyone you are familiar with?
I'm familiar with all of them.
You are familiar with all of them?
Yes.
Okay, great. So do you mind just telling me briefly about each of them?
So for Azure Data Engineer, basically they design, implement, monitor, secure data, and using a full stack of Azure data service to satisfy business needs. So that's for then data analysts. So they enable businesses to maximize the value of their data assets by using Microsoft Power BI. And for data scientists, now they apply their knowledge of data science, machine learning to implement, run machine learning workloads of Azure. And for artificial intelligence engineer, which is now popular now, use cognitive services, machine learning knowledge of Microsoft to implement our Microsoft, basically.
Wow. Okay. I think if I say this is great is an understatement. Oh, sorry, my bad. I'm coming. Just give me, I'm trying to see. I think I've gotten my, please just hold on. I'm having, okay. Okay. I'm trying to see if I think I've gotten my slides. It was actually acting up before. So I think maybe that one will just hold on. Okay.
Okay, so
Okay,
you want me
yes.
to stop
Okay,
sharing?
yes. Thank you
Okay,
very
I'm
much.
dropping that. You're welcome.
Okay, let me share my screen now. Thank you for that. Okay, good. So thank you very much. Please kindly confirm my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so thank you. Now, just like you have rightly said, okay, the only addition I will add to what you have said here is that even what I'm adding is self-explanatory in the sense that they all work with what? With data. They all work with data. And you will discover that, I remember even in our other track that we have the data analyst class, and you will discover that the knowledge of SQL is important, the knowledge of Python is important, the knowledge of Power BI is important, the knowledge of Excel is important. And all those things, within what I'm talking about, we are talking about data analysts. But you discover that they are learning a particular skill that has to do with what? A database administrator. Okay, because database administrator, one of their key day-to-day tasks is ability to be able to just, carry out in terms of, and there's something, okay, since they said daily operational, backing up of database is also an operational task. And, so all I'm trying to say is that you discover that all these other platform role, they work with data. Okay. Now, that is just an addition to what you have said. And I remember you used one keyword when it came to this artificial or AI engineer, that this is becoming, or this is maybe a highly sorted after kind of role. Okay. But the truth is, all this now, if they don't do what they are supposed to do, this person might not find. There are some people that coming from maybe one background gives you an edge, but definitely, regardless of each of these other role you want to play, okay, there are some skill sets that will help you as of having the basic knowledge of what a database administrator will do. Okay, in the sense that for these other roles, you might be given raw data. So how do you compile? How do you filter? How do you make that data suitable for what you want to do? Okay. But just have that understanding that apart from maybe the Azure database administrator, we still have some of these other roles that are tied towards data related activity. Now, the way the Azure SQL platform is structured is what we want to actually look at here. Okay. Now, we are looking at in terms of cost, the vertical role, and we are looking at in terms of administration. Now, you can agree with me, but you are free to also disagree if you don't agree with me, okay? That when it comes to on-prem related database administrative tasks, okay? Now, most of the tasks, apart from maybe when you are trying to automate some activities, but most of the tasks is in terms of administration. Now, look at it this way. I want you to understand this diagram, because having a better understanding of this diagram will make life easier with where we are going, or from where we are to where we are actually going. Okay. So basically, this is just trying to tell you the benefit or the importance of, will I say, migrating to the cloud, or probably having an hybrid environment within an organization. Now, let's start from the lower bottom. Of course, dedicated or high costs and higher administrative, or dedicated higher cost and higher administration when you are having your resources on premises at this extreme end. Okay. SQL Server, you are using physical machine, you are implementing it, of course, running the server, maintaining the server, maybe in a server room and stuff like that. Okay, in terms of protection, in terms of electricity and stuff like that. And of course, the administrator will also have to, in terms of patching, in terms of updating, in terms of upgrading, and all those other things. So all those things is actually on them. That's why the administration is on a higher level. And of course, in terms of cost, they have to keep all those things in order. Now, the next level to this, which reduces this administration, because as you are going, the administrative tax or the administrative responsibility is decreasing. Okay. As you are moving up, the cost is also decreasing. Now, for some other organization, they don't have physical servers. That means the SQL server is not installed on physical server. They have what they call virtualization. And let me bring up my whiteboard. Are you familiar with okay, before that one will come up, let me just clear this. Let me bring up, are you familiar with Hyper-V?
Yes.
Okay, so what can you tell me about Hyper-V?
So Hyper-V basically is just another how will I say it's another way, I mean, I would say is another operating system basically that you can use in maybe when you're trying to build like a cluster environment or to set up your environment. So your SQL might be sitting on that.
Okay. So let me see if this is up. Okay, good. Okay, let me use one of this. Come up. Okay, just to add to what you have said, when you talk about the first thing we saw here, because the reason why I'm bringing up the Hyper-V and this other stuff, this is Hyper-V. The next one is Nutanix. The next one is you have the VMware AXSI. Okay, now these are actually hypervisors. Okay, they are softwares. Now, when you buy servers, oops. Okay, good. Let me erase this one. When you buy servers, of course, a server could be a high configuration. There are servers they could be of 1 terabyte in size. They could have maybe even 1,000 gig in terms of memory, depending. Okay, this is also 1 terabyte. Okay, let me just say this one is 500 to keep it simple. So when you install your hypervisor, okay, now you can use it to now create different servers. And that is the concept of what Azure and all these other cloud providers are doing. So for here now, you could have maybe your SQL or your server. You could have SQL one, you could have another one. Okay. So this makes it easier to have different, I don't want to overflog it. Okay. So for this one now, you could have a virtualized environment. In that one server, you have different instances of virtual machine on which your SQL servers are actually implemented or have been what's the word? You have created the virtualization of that particular machine and you have installed your SQL server on it. Okay. So this now, in terms of the cost compared to this, you only maintain that particular one server that has different SQL servers or different virtual machines. Let me just put it that way.
Yes. That's
Compared
like
to
a
this,
cluster.
good.
Yeah.
Do you understand it? So you have it. Now, you'll discover that now, in terms of maintenance now, once you are able to maintain that particular Hyper-V, I think, did I actually activated my Hyper-V here? Okay, let's see. But actually, I think I make use of VMware here. Good. So now, okay, this is just, I think I have one. So for here now, this is how you could install this Hyper-V on that your bare metal server. Okay. And if you want to, you could do a lot of things here. I don't want to connect to a server. Let me move this one. Where am I? Okay. I don't think I have. Okay. So I just want to show something. So here now you can create, let's assume this my system is a bare metal and I've installed the Hyper-V role or maybe whatever, and I want to create different virtual machine. So I can do that, create virtual machine 1, create virtual machine 2, and on that one, okay, install all those different whatever. So now instead of installing directly on this my system, one SQL server, I can install maybe 3. So as long as this is in order, you discover that I have little things to take care of here, maybe the updating or whatsoever, compared to having those SQL server on individual machines. Okay. Now, when you come to the cloud, remember that we are moving from on-prem gradually. So when you come to the cloud, we have the aspect, or we have this environment whereby you might decide that, okay, you want to use infrastructure as a service. Remember, when we talk about infrastructure as a service, you want to be the one to determine the operating system. or probably maybe in your organization, you have some kind of legacy application that are working on specific operating system. And that is why you might want to go with this. Okay. Now, within the cloud, you might also want to go for platform as a service. For platform as a service, a lot of the responsibility. Now, I've explained this. I'm sure you will you understand this now. So invariably, what we are saying is that as you are moving upward in terms of as an administrator, what you do, your task reduces, especially when it comes to platform as a service here. When you talk about patching, when you talk about upgrade, you don't even talk about upgrade, because for platform as a service, you're actually using the latest one. So in terms of patching and every other thing, Microsoft is taking care of all those responsibilities compared to this. So that's why you discover in terms of the administration, it is reducing as you are moving up. Now, when you talk about cost, of course, you have a lower cost compared to, because when you have this or this, you have to find maybe a data center. Maybe your organization is a bank. Of course, they must have a data center, and within that data center, there must be constant electricity. Within that data center, there must be cool in terms of AC, and of course, you must secure that location. So all those things you pay for them. But when you are using the cloud, probably using infrastructure as a service or probably platform as a service, all of these ones you are not bothered. You can just wake up any time of the day through your PC, connect to that particular server, access that particular database. Okay. So what you are just paying for is the usage. You pay as you are using. Okay. So that is the cost. And if, let's assume, for your organization, Friday or maybe Friday particular night to Sunday, people don't use it, you can shut it down. And of course, in the cloud, when you only pay for what you use. So that is just a quick summary of this. So I don't know if there's any question or any feedback regarding this particular explanation or something you would like to add.
You said it correctly, Prof, because just looking at the diagram, as you're going up, the cost will reduce. But at the same time, when you talk about security, the cloud is more secure than the on-prem, even though with the physical one, with the on-prem, you still can secure it, but you cannot compare security to the one in the cloud.
Okay. Thank you for that contribution. So we'll move on. So now we are looking at, so if you have an understanding of this particular slide, okay, the next one will make it a little bit easier to understand. So let's quickly talk about SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine. Okay. Now, when you talk about SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine, okay, this is under infrastructure as a service, because you can determine if you, okay, let me just quickly do something. We've not got into that part of the lab. Oops, don't do this. Okay. Let me just sign in. Okay, good. Okay, so now, for this particular one, you have Azure Virtual Machine and you are creating an SQL Server instance on it. So in such a case, like I said, this is actually a good example of infrastructure as a service. In terms of the computing power, in terms of the RAM, you determine it, okay? And you can determine the SQL version. Remember I said something earlier about this platform as a service for this particular slide here, when you are using the Azure SQL database. Here, for this server, you are using the current or the updated one. So in terms of patching, that is none of your business. You don't even need to bother yourself about it. But yeah, okay, let me just quickly show you something. So you see the, so I'll go to Azure SQL. Okay, now Now, I want you to, there's a difference between this Azure SQL and SQL database, but we are starting with this.
Yes.
So if you come here now and you say create, it's coming up. Let's wait for it. Okay, good. Now, remember, if you remember when we were talking about the course outline, here is asking you, do you want to create an SQL database?
Yeah.
For
Management.
this is good. This one is under platform as a service.
Service.
Now, this is one of the most expensive. So even when I'm training people, I don't provision this. So I will not advise you, except maybe you are running it in an environment whereby you know that the cost, you are not going to bear it. But once you understand this, definitely you know how to work with this. Okay. So for this now, you want to work with this SQL server that is installed within a virtual machine. So if we go here now, it will ask you on what kind of server do you want to install this SQL server? Do you want it to be on a Windows Server 2022? Yes. So I'll pick this one. So it could be on Red Hat. It could be on different, can you see it? Yeah. On different operating systems. So depending on maybe the kind of operating system you want. So you have a choice. And I will advise that when you are working with this, okay, ensure you go with anyone that have free SQL license. If not, when they are billing you, of course, if you have an understanding of how licensing works, I think I'm opportune to be in an environment whereby they sell license right now. Unlike before, you just buy initially. Okay, let me just give you a quick this thing. So if you are not deploying like this one now, you have free SQL server license on this developer on Windows Server. So then or by on-prem, you have to buy the Windows Server license. That is one. And you have to buy the SQL Server license. That is two. Okay. So, but when you are working with this one now, okay, this SQL Server is more like a free license. So you are not paying. But remember that even if you are paying, if you are using a pay as you go subscription or whatsoever, remember you are still paying for the resources you are deploying. But one of the benefits of this one is, so let me just pick this one. Okay. We'll leave this one, come back, or we'll come back. Let me click on create. Which will access some other, but I don't want to complete the creation until we are through. I'm not seeing the line moving zone. It's showing me my connection is, but let's wait for it. But we'll still talk about this, but we are starting with this one. So let's leave this one good. I know it will ask me some other things. So let's move on. So now, we've just seen this one, we've seen about the specific SQL version and on what kind of operating system you want to integrate it. So for this one, you are still going to say maybe the computing power. And when you are running it on an Azure virtual machine, okay, you can run some other additional services like maybe the analysis, the reporting, the machine learning, just like the usual way you are installing your SQL server on a particular system or maybe server within your environment. Okay, so that is what this one is showing us. Now, what you are seeing here is a brief overview. Okay, let's see if I don't want to spin this one up until when we get to where we are supposed to provision the lab. Now, and I think Microsoft and their AI, they are going a long way, help me create a low-cost VM, even if you are creating this virtual machine, help me create so depending on, so you can just decide that, okay, you want to choose, but let me just show you something. Now you can see that this is similar to when you are creating virtual machine in Azure. But in this case now, you are creating a virtual machine that have an SQL server provision together with it. And if you look at this, okay, now good. The selected image is not valid for the specific location. Let me see which one. Is that East US? Let me see if I choose West, if it will work for me.
Why?
Okay, I'll tell you, because this is not an enterprise subscription. The kind of subscription I'm
Oh,
using,
okay.
good. But if you are paying for it, of course, you have your choice. So now that I change my location,
Because you can do anything.
good.
Well, you can,
Yes.
yeah.
So
Okay,
that
now it
is
makes
right.
sense. Okay.
So basically, I just wanted to show us this part, but we are not yet configuring it. So you can decide to. Now, remember that
Nice.
one of the points we saw here when you are provisioning is you can decide that, okay, you want a kind of server with a specific RAM, with a specific configuration. That is where this one now is coming into place. So what size of server do you want to use? Do you want to use the B series? So if you want to use a 2V CPU and 8 gig, all you need to do is come here, change the configuration. Okay, so you can decide to go for this one, and I've selected that. You see that this configuration changed, and what happened? The cost to change. Okay, so for this one now, I'll create, but let's just move on. Okay, we'll leave that one. Let's just move on. So now these are the different SQL version available. Okay, when we talk about the okay, I think I want you to. There's this question that is popping to my head. We have SQL Server version and SQL Server edition. Do you mind
Yes.
telling me the difference between the two?
Okay, good. So when you talk about version, you're talking about the enterprise developer uh, or for business. And when you talk about edition, you're talking about a year of that SQL Server. So is it 2019? Is it 2017 or 2020, 12? You can Google it and see. So you talk about the enterprise.
Okay.
So you see, they are giving you SQL version 2022.
So so if you look at this
So
now,
yeah.
so these are the
So that's the
different
edition right there. So you
edition.
see that
Good,
the edition, you have the enterprise,
good.
you have the standard.
Okay,
You
good.
see
So why
underneath,
the good? So underneath, okay, better, good.
yeah,
So these are the different edition.
edition.
Okay. So now when you talk about the different version,
Yes. Now you'll be
so
talking
the
about, yeah,
different good. So, and one thing you should know about each of these is what? It comes with newer feature and newer functionality.
correct.
Okay. So I'm speaking to somebody that is seasoned. So I will not, where I'm not supposed to waste time, I will not waste time. But please, if you feel I'm moving too fast or you need clarification, don't hesitate to pull me
I
back.
will.
But
No problem,
good.
Prof. Thank
So
you.
this is you're welcome. So this is the journey of how it all started. And presently, this is where it is. Okay. And of course, when you're talking about build, okay, when you're talking about build, that means how will I explain that build? Okay. Of course, I'm trying
So
to I
build
hope
is like
okay.
the compatibility level. So you
Okay,
have
good.
12.0, 14.0, which is for 2017. When you talk about 15.0 is 2019. So
Okay, good.
whenever we will log into SQL Server under the database, you can go to properties and go to general, then you go to compatibility, then you see they give you
Okay.
15.0.
Just hold on. Okay, hold on. So we all learn
Yeah.
this together. That's why I said there are a lot of things that I will ask you. I will not bother myself. Okay, because so Instructor Joyful, are you still on this call? Come up. Okay, let me wait for it when it comes up. Okay, now
Okay.
just to add to what you have actually said. Okay, you've actually said it all, but just to add, like that means if this one now, like this SQL Server 2019, with build 15.0. Okay, it also, just like you said, they show the compatibility level. Now, that means there are some certain things you can do in a database of this particular version.
Correct.
That if you don't set the compatibility level here, it might not work.
Correct.
If you are bringing that database, or
exactly.
you understand? So that's good. So that is just the summary of the whole thing. So I wonder why my this thing, okay, it's coming up. Okay. Okay, you said something about going to database.
Yeah, you can expand. Yeah. So expand one of the go to properties.
Properties, okay.
Yeah. Then go to you see under no, not under collision. Yeah, go to option. Let's see what we have under option.
Okay. Don't do this to me now. Okay. Maybe he doesn't want me to talk about this.
No, that's okay. It will come up. So
okay.
do you see it?
Good.
Compatibility
Okay.
level?
Okay.
Yeah, which is yes. So
okay.
you can, depending on what you want to do, which application, you can change it easily.
So it will be able to be compatible to the version of the application that you want to communicate
depending
with.
on the application you are running on that database. Let's say I'm running an application that is only compatible with SQL version 2016.
I have to set this compatibility level.
Yeah, yes, you can set it. So that's why you say it's 15.0.
Okay.
2017 is 14. But they call it 14.0, or you can call it 150.
1.0.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's a good one. That's a good one. So let's move on. Thank you for that. So I told you that this will be interesting. Now we have some backup solution. Okay. And most times, please by tomorrow, try and get some of these database. So if you look at my own, let me close out on this. So if you look at my environment,
you have to give me that in order for me to install it. Because
that's I've shown you. If you remember where that link.
Yes, but in order for me to be able to install these this SQL Server, is this an enterprise edition or developer edition or business edition? So you have to give me
no. The most important thing is
or you have it
okay. No, okay. Which one do you have? Which one do you have on your system?
Currently, I think I have a developer one, but I haven't logged into it for a long time. But I think I still have to install an XSMS.
With the developer, we can do most of what we want to do. But I think for this there are some limitation in terms of the Okay, let's do it this way. Let's work with what you have currently.
Okay. So
let's work with what you have currently.
I'm not sure if I thought it still works because I've used it in a while now. Say this thing is changing.
I didn't get there was
everybody is going to moving to the cloud now. So wherever you want to do, you can easily install it.
Okay, let me see.
And just turn it
off. You can get the community.
Yeah.
Okay, you can get the community. I'm coming. SQL.
Yeah. You want me to install that one, you have to send it to me. Even Prof send
no. I don't even no, you can reach out.
I just say yes, but I was asking myself, where do you want me to get it from?
Okay,
because you guys pay for it.
We'll talk.
You pay for it.
Good.
It's not free.
So, but let me just see. I think there are still some SQL Server downloads. There's still a way you can get from Microsoft, but it has to be maybe for a month or so. Yeah,
but
even this evaluation.
Just log into the Azure portal and launch. Provision one on it, and I'll turn it off after I'm finished.
I didn't get that.
I can just do all this in my portal. I just create one, and once I'm done, I can just turn it off instead of me.
Even apart from the portal, No, what I'm saying is that for this one, you will need your SSMS, because when you create, this is not from the portal. This is the normal
Yes,
SQL
this is a
server.
VM. Yeah.
Yes, this is not even a VM. I installed this one directly on my system. This is your normal Microsoft SQL server.
Okay.
Okay. So it is these databases that I was saying that you will have to install.
Oh,
So if
yes,
you
because
have
we are
any
going to use
SQL
it to
server,
practice.
yes,
But you already,
yes.
yeah, but my problem is not for me to get this MSC, the management studio, not the management studio, because you can easily get that one. But in order for me to install the SQL, I must require you to buy it. It's not for free because you probably got it from
No, you
somewhere.
can. No, see, one thing is you can get it from here. That's what I'm saying. This SMS,
Okay.
you can get. I'll just share this link. Okay. So you can get it SQL Server on-prem. Okay. So you can
Okay.
get from Microsoft. But for this one,
You have
there's
to pay
you
for it.
can, one thing is if you are using the developer version, it is free. But there are some limitation on some certain things in terms of this, maybe all this profile agent and whatsoever, But the most important thing is I can guarantee you that 99% of what we want to do, or let me say 90% of what we want to do, you can still do it with it. But you can get, let me just share this link with you so you can get that from here.
So probably, I mean, a lot of so many things. I'll tell you off front now. My life has been all over. So I'm even involved in trading. So which is I'm studying it. So, but this is I need to take this seriously than trading. So because in trading is like you want to bet, but the difference is we don't have money, you can bet. So this is where I get my money
Bet.
from.
So definitely, okay, good. So this
so
is
this
more
is
the
more
golden
important
egg. So
than
you have,
that. Yeah.
they're good. So no problem. So okay, so thank you for
next
that.
week I
So
won't be available either.
okay,
I won't be available next week Saturday.
no problem. We'll get the video ready for you. We'll
Okay.
get the video ready for you. No problem. Okay, so hello.
I'm with you, sir.
Okay, good. So now, if you look at the backup solution, okay, so backup, so definitely when you talk about, and I think you just mentioned something about new SQL Server, okay, there are some different features, which is even based on the compatibility we just talked about now. There's always, I told you that when they are coming up with a new edition or with a new version, there's always something new that needed or they have added or implemented in it, okay? So for Microsoft, they always introduce some additional or new features just to support even when you are running your SQL server within an Azure virtual machine. So talk about automated backup, talk about Azure backup, and talk about backup to URL. So these are the three different ways you can do backup, okay? So for this automated, you can set up this regular schedule. All your databases, you can back them up, okay? And when we talk about Azure backup, remember we did something of this, okay? So you can set up maybe in terms of even the whole infrastructure, that is the virtual machine with the SQL server on it, you can back it up on Azure, okay? And you can probably maybe have your
Backup on
you want to back up
URL,
those
that means
resources.
to the storage.
Good. Maybe those things you want them to, you have those databases within your Azure blob storage, okay? You can bring them from your storage and you back up. So you can use backup based on what? On URL, okay?
Yes. Are we going to practice this?
Now, we are, yeah.
Okay.
We will.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so that's why I want you to, and for this case now, sincerely, I would love us to do it this way.
Okay, sir.
Once you set up your environment,
I
some
will
of
try
these
to do it
things,
tonight.
I can just start it. Okay, good. So I can just start it up in my own environment and like, okay, we are using share your screen and let's do it. Okay, so that because I know this is your major area of focus. So we want to work together in that particular perspective, so that you'll be doing more of the hands-on. You can lead, you guide, and work with you on that way.
Okay, sir.
So now you're welcome. So when you talk about the different deployment option, you can create. I'm sure you were taught about ARM deployment during the AZ 104, because this is very, very important. And if I'm to talk about this AZ 104, let me just bring up something. I just want to quickly ARM deployments. I want to there's an extension for it. Let me see if I have it. So while it's coming up, okay, I just want to, you have okay, let me say Azure. That's the full meaning of resource manager. Okay, this. I think about this one from Microsoft. I think I've installed it already. That's okay, good. So I can now tell you what I want to. So when you talk about this Azure Resource Manager, okay, yeah, you could always have, let's assume your organization. We are talking about different ways by which you can set up. Remember, we looked at the fact that you want to create this particular environment, okay, whereby you have your SQL server inside an Azure virtual machine, okay. Okay, so you can set up that in resource templates or an Azure Resource Manager. You can set it up. Of course, you use the templates. You can use your PowerShell or your Azure CLI, and you can use this new one, which is known as Azure Bicep. When you're talking about infrastructure as a code, this is the particular one. Okay, so we'll look at, we might not be able to, because these are things you should have learned in AZ 104, but this is the essence of me bringing this one up. Let's assume okay, it's a new folder. I'll just say tests. I just want to quickly show you something. So under this test, let me create a new file. I'll just say storage. I'm not creating this, but I just wanted to show you something. .json. Now, if I do this ARM, good. If I click on this, so this is how your ARM template looks like. Are we still together?
I'm with you, bro.
Okay, good. So this is how the ARM template looks like. Now, let me show you something. Let me just show you something quickly. Let me just I won't provision dummy information. Let me say admin user. Is this my normal password? Regarding that ARM template, that's why I want to just show you something. I'll leave every other thing. Let me just leave it as, I hope it will not ask me to create it before I see what I want to see. Okay, there's something I want to show you, monitoring, advanced. I'm not creating this like I told you, but I just want to see. Tag. Let me do review. Okay. Okay, but basically what I wanted to show you is, I didn't actually input some certain things. There's a point it will tell you download the ARM templates. So let's assume in your organization, you've been tasked with the responsibility of creating SQL server within an Azure VM. And you want to get a particular configuration that you'll be using for deploying. Maybe the name will just be the only thing that is different. Once you start this way, and you get to that point you want to create, and it asks you to download, that one you have downloaded, you can always come to this place, edit it, change the name, and you provision the same configuration over and over, maybe in different branches, okay, using this concept. And you can also use PowerShell or Azure CLI. We've talked about how all of this within the AZ 104. So that's why I told you that this AZ 104 or that AZ 104 was a very, very unique class in terms of this one. It makes life and understanding of some certain things very, very easy. Okay, now I've talked about the Azure Resource Manager, which we looked at here. Okay, now anything that is being provisioned, let me use this. Now in Azure, okay, in Azure, we can use the portal. You can use the CLI. You can use PowerShell. You can use SDK. You can even use the ARM templates. I think even Bicep to provision resources. But all this behind the scene is actually the AML or ARM, which is your Azure Resource Manager that will do the provisioning. Okay, so regardless of which method you are using to spin up that resources, they still have to be provisioned by this particular one. So this is what is acting behind the scene to set up that infrastructure that has been declared. So this gives you a clearer picture of what we are saying. Now, you have your Azure infrastructure, okay? Or let's start from here. You might decide that you want to use the portal. You must decide that you want to use the CLI or you want to use a third party. That third party can communicate with the SDK, okay? But behind the scene, they all communicate with what this Azure Resource Manager, okay? Now, the Azure Resource Manager work with all this underlying one you are seeing to spin up that Azure infrastructure. Now, there are some other things that can come into play in terms of the kind of permission the person has, as in role-based access control, in terms of the kind of authentication the person is having, and some other telemetry and insight you want to set up while provisioning it. Okay, the Azure Resource Manager will take that into consideration. And by now, you will want to agree with me that it is not everybody that have access to the Azure environment that can provision resources. It depends on the kind of permission that person, the person is having. So if I come here now, I have I think just one subscription. Let me clear this one out. If I come to my subscription, this is my subscription. If I click on this, so if I want to know the kind of permission I have, I'll click on this access control. This is known as identity and access management. This I am. Now, this is at the subscription level. With this kind of permission, I can do things within this subscription. You might decide to create maybe a resource group and give somebody permission. So that means the person permission starts from within that resource group. If anything, they will fail. Okay, based the permission has been assigned. So I'm waiting for this one to come up. So let's wait for it. So that is just this. So let me ask, any questions so far? Any questions so far?
Oh, so far, I'm a little bit confused when it comes to we talk about Azure managed instance, and
okay,
we talk about the virtual machine. Then we talk about the SQL VM. So what is the difference? So I'm still
between them
to dig into it.
Okay,
Please.
good. So let me use this since I still have this. Now, if I should ask you, let me do this. If I should ask you now, what can you tell me about the number of SQL server that I have? This is my
number. Yeah.
This is my SSMS.
Yes.
And from this, you can see that I have just one instance, right?
Yes.
Within that one instance, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 databases, right?
Correct.
Good. Now, the first part, which is, let me go back to this slide so that you can get it very well. I'll just take one step back. Let me see if I can. Okay, not here. We are still supposed to talk about that, but let me just clear.
I think your Paas
Okay,
is
okay.
fine.
Let me even bring this one up. So you asked about this one. You
Yes.
asked about this one, SQL
Yes.
Server in Azure VM, and you asked
Yeah.
about Azure SQL
The-
Server. Good. So now,
Yes.
let me do this. VMware.
Can I take a screenshot of that thing you just sent to me? Let me please take a screenshot of this. Don't mind. Good. Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
I didn't get that. Can you come again? I think the network.
No, I just took a screenshot of that portion of module 1 that the SQL Server in Azure VM,
Okay.
Azure
Okay.
SQL database, and
So now,
Azure SQL managed instance.
okay. Okay. So if you look at this, these are all virtual machines. Some of them are okay. Let me even open this one. I might not log into it. This is my SQL one. I
Yeah,
have a virtual
VMs.
machine. I created a virtual machine, VM, and inside that VM, I have SQL Server installed on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So this one now, this one you are seeing, this SQL one this is a Windows server. It might not be today because I want us to first understand the basics. Then we'll go about creating it. We are going to create two. We are going to work with these two. We'll create this and this. The first two will work with it, but this one I won't create it. One, it is very, very expensive and it takes a lot of time for you to provision it. Okay. But so coming back to this, I don't need this backup. Okay. So I just want good. So if I do Control Delete, this will give you a better understanding of SQL Server in Azure VM. You understand how Azure VM works. You understand how to create Azure VM, right?
Of course.
We did that in our AZ 104. Now, so this is a VM. Let's assume this VM is on Azure. Okay, I've created it. But on it now, okay, on this Azure VM, I now have SQL Server installed on this Azure VM. That is the case of this first one. SQL Server in an Azure VM. I don't know if that is clear now.
Yes, it's getting clearer.
Good. Now, for this one, this Azure SQL database, we are going to do the hands-on. You see how to create these two. So for this one now, when you come here, let me duplicate this. If you go to this place, if you do SQL, can you see it? SQL database. Now, one more thing I need to add to this one. This configuration or this setup is known as infrastructure as a service. Because we created
VM. Yes, VMware.
The VM. No. Let's assume this is Azure VM. Okay, this is Azure VM. This VM is on Azure. But inside that VM, you your server.
This is kind of
installed on it.
Database SQL Server I would like to install. This one on a VM because you can do multiple of stuff. Because you have your domain controller, you have your other instance server that you can do availability easily, replication.
I don't want to configure it. I will text you. So you have a VM on Azure. Then you now added. I didn't get that. I think the network is.
Yes, don't worry. Go ahead. I said this is the kind
Okay,
of
you understand?
installation I would like to do because you have multiple uh instance on it.
Can you drop it on the chat? Can you drop it
Yeah, it seems there is the network is bad
on the
due
chat?
to
I
latency.
think my
Yeah.
network is I can confirm what you are saying.
Okay, Introduction, can you log out and log in again and see if it improves? Mr. Paul, can you hear me?
I'm with you. I think it's network.
Okay. Yeah. So the VM he showed you now is like an on-prem server.
Yeah, that's the one I would like to install. Then that one, we can easily do a backup and see if
Okay, I am no. Mr. Paul.
Okay, he's back.
Mr. Paul.
He's back.
Sir.
If I can, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, sure, can hear you now.
Okay, you are saying this. Okay, saying this is the one you would like to install. No.
Of course.
This is okay.
Because
Okay,
I
you
can
can
do a lot of stuff on this one instead of me just
okay
download it directly on my
okay,
physical machine.
okay, good. But if you do that, you can do that. That's one option. You can do that. Okay, but it depends on the configuration of the system
I already set it up to a point that I
you
can
have.
use
Don't.
hypervisor, but I don't have my.
I think for this one, I use a 2
SQL.
gig. Do that so that you just all what you are doing is from this virtual machine, not directly from your system. Yes, you can do that. But the concept I'm trying to good. So the concept I'm trying to show you here is how this looks like. This SQL server in an Azure virtual machine. So what you are seeing currently is the virtual machine. Okay. And within this, but this virtual machine now is within my own VMware. The virtual machine is actually on Azure. And inside that virtual machine, you have an SQL server installed on it. Okay? So that is this first one. SQL server in an Azure VM. So for this other one, Azure SQL database, this one, it falls under IA. Okay? While this one falls under platform as a service. So how do you create that one? I told you once we are done with, let's get a better understanding. So for this one now, the server, if you look at this now, I have a server, or let me just use this one. Let me use this other one to explain. I have a server, and inside this server, I have my databases. But this server is on my system. So for this particular one now, which is Azure SQL server, Azure SQL database, the server is Azure. You don't need to set up your SQL server. Just create the database, but you also create a server which is on Azure. So for that one now, the kind of server is always up to date. You don't have to do any patching or whatsoever. We are still going to deploy them, but let me just explain. Now, when you this third one, you are talking about Azure SQL managed instance. Recall that this is one instance. This is an instance. I can have another server, SQL server. The name will not be this one. I can have maybe this one that I'm installed now is 2017. That's why you're saying this 15. I hope I'm right. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it 2015 or 20? Okay.
That's
I can decide to install this 2019. I can decide to install 14, which is 2017. That's another instance.
All right.
So when you have this, when you want to have this functionality, you want to have an instance of a server in Azure. That is when you go for this particular one.
Okay.
This is also a Paas. Okay. Let me save this. So that is just the major difference between the three. So I don't know if I've been able to clarify some things now.
Yes, you did, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Now, when you talk about when you are deploying, remember we are actually looking at this Azure SQL Server on an Azure virtual machine. So during that process, when it is being deployed, there are some other associate resources that is deployed along with it. And one of such resources is your Azure storage. And what will the Azure storage, what is the function? It is this Azure storage that serve as, for your SQL server, it serve as, it makes use of this to either the manage this or the blob storage. Okay, so for this SQL server now, it is using your Azure storage either as a managed disk or as a blob storage. Remember, when you talk about the blob storage, when we're talking about the AZ104, one of the features of this storage is that we said it is elastic. Okay, in the sense that depending on what you are putting, depending on the way you are setting it up, okay, so for your, so depending on the way you set it up, I won't want to go into managed disk and unmanaged disk. But one thing in Azure that should always come to the back of your mind is anytime they say something is a managed service, disk is one of the services that is being provided in Azure. You know, when you want to create a virtual machine, you have to provision the disk. Anytime you see the word manage, that means Microsoft or Azure, they are doing a lot of things for you, or they are taking a lot of responsibility away from your shoulder, which they are working on. That's the concept of this manage. And you can relate that to what? The Paas, platform as a service, whereby they do some certain things for you instead of you doing it. Now, when you know that the kind of workload you want to deploy on this server or what you want to use this SQL server for is heavy, okay, you go for either your premium SSD or use your Ultra. I'll give you an example. Now, a good example of what we are talking about is okay, let me see if I can bring this one up. You know, there's this type of this they call, is it the when you are deploying SSD hard disk? Okay, let me see hard drive and other types. I cannot remember. Okay, good. Okay, I think we can use this one. Come on. I just want to, now the point I'm trying to bring up here is that this premium SSD and this ultra disk, sorry, my bad, they are extremely fast. That is why you can use them for every workload. In terms of maybe the kind of workload you want to use, whereby the write and the read is on a very, very, you know, is highly demanding, or what's the right word, then you don't use maybe standard HDD. HDDs. Okay. So if you look at this, let me see if I can. Good. You have what they call the SATA, you have what they call the HDD, and you have what they call the SSD. Okay. So if you look at this now, they said hard disk drive. I just need, okay. HDD can access files that are not written in one place. SSD store memory in flash. But just know that newer system, or let me give you an example personally I can relate with. Okay, there was this system I was using formerly that if I'm supposed to have a class by 8, I can tell that I have to on that system by maybe 8:40 or 8:45. That's 15 minutes before the class. Because before it will boot and for me to sign in, it will take nothing less than 10 to 15 minutes. Okay? And then it was using what? HDD. But now, I can tell that under even 2 minutes is an understatement. This particular system I'm using. When I start it immediately, so even if the class is for 8, I can tell you that maybe 7:58. But just because of maybe I am conscious of time, I know I still have to connect to Zoom and I don't know how the network and I still have to open my portal. So that's why I might decide, okay, 10 minutes before class, let me do that. So that's just the difference between this particular kind of disk. But all these things, you'll see it when we are deploying our SQL server within Azure VM. Okay. So now when you talk about Azure infrastructure availability option, these are some of the things you are already familiar with. Okay. When you talk about the Azure platform, it's actually fault tolerant. There are a lot of things that have been put in place to ensure that this is possible. And one of such cases is you talk about we have availability zone, we have region. Okay, you also have what do they call it? Where you have what is this thing? Let me see if I can still remember. At the top of my head, I cannot remember, but if you recall, I think we'll explain that during the you have the update. Is it where you have this is a rack, this is a rack, this is it fault domain? Yeah, fault domain and update domain, whereby you could have maybe a VM provision here, you have another VM provision here, you have another VM. So if this is down, you still have this and this up running. Yeah, you could have SQL server here, you could have SQL server here, you could have SQL server here. This is update domain. So that when you're updating this and this are still available. When you're updating this, do you understand? So that's just the concept of what we are actually looking at. Okay. So another thing is in terms of high availability platform, all these ones, they are also put into place because if you recall also, just like what I mentioned earlier, when you talk about region and come back here, within a region, you could have maybe let's say one AZ, another AZ, another AZ, and all these things are interconnected, but each of them they are independent, okay, in terms of their cooling, their connectivity and whatsoever. So even if this one goes down, this and this are still highly available. Okay, so we talked about all of this, so that's why I'm not taking my time to explain them. Okay, and we default, so all these are things that have been talked about. So when you are using a single, but one thing you should understand is that as you are going down, you are increasing the high availability option of the resource. Okay, but one thing you must understand is as you are going down, you are increasing the cost, because once you are setting up all these other things, they take more resources, or you have to put a lot of things in place, and of course you pay for more. Okay, so you can also build high availability and disaster recovery using always on availability group. Some of these things we'll still see it, but like I told you, there are some certain things we are not going to touch based on the fact that you actually some of these things already. Now let me give room for question before we move on again. Let me give room for question. Any questions so far?
No, sir. Apart from the one I asked before, no, everything is clear.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on. So the next one, which was your question, okay, is the next one we are looking at, the Azure SQL platform. Okay, so let's see if it is possible. Okay, good. Now remember, I told you that we have one that falls under infrastructure as a service, and we have two that falls under platform as a service. So your Azure SQL server, Azure SQL database, and your Azure SQL Managed instance, which is part of where your question came from. These two, they fall under platform as a service. And if you remember, one of the benefits I gave you is that when you are using either of these, you are always using the latest version of your SQL Server binaries. Okay? So there's nothing like you want to upgrade. There's nothing like you want to patch. That responsibility is on Azure, not on you. Okay? So there are a lot of other benefits in terms of scalability and in terms of deployment within the cloud when you are making use of this. But that first one is maybe the organization are using a particular maybe edition or version of SQL Server, and that is what they want to continue to use based on maybe the kind of application that is communicating with the database. Okay, so they need a particular operating system, they need a particular edition and a particular version of your SQL Server. So they might want to go for the SQL Server that is installed on a virtual machine. Okay. So we are looking at this. I told you we are still going to do the deployment of this one. But for this one, let me just mention some key things you need to understand here. So Instructor Joyful, if you have any contribution, don't hesitate to just let me know. Now, when you talk about the Azure SQL database, okay, this is actually for, let's assume you want to create a single database for a particular application. You can set that one up. And when you are setting it up, you are going to see, you want to create a single database. You want to create an elastic pool. So as at now, I'm not going to dive into what an elastic pool is, but you will get to understand it. And this is a very, very good one. Elastic pool is, the concept is when you talk about a car pool in an organization, there are some organizations that they don't assign car to specific person. Okay? They have what they call a car pool. You just have different cars within the organization. So when a staff want to step out, the car that is available based on your position within the organization, you are free to make use of that car and the driver that is available at that point in time. So you can liken that to this elastic pool, but when we get there, we'll talk about it. So you can also, when deploying, you can choose, these are some of the various deployment options you can choose. Hyperscale, or even from the name hyperscale, okay, you know that this is for something that is very, 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 you know, you need a high configuration and stuff like that. Now, for serverless, we are still going to look at each of these in detail. So I'm just giving us a more like a tip of the other. So when you talk about serverless, this serverless is when you need that data, when the database is functioning, that is when it will come up. Remember the concept of serverless. Like, let me see if I can use this as an instance. Now, this MySQL server is actually provisioned within this virtual machine. So whether I have a task I want to perform on the database or not, okay, because it is on this virtual machine or on this particular server, okay, that means, but for your serverless, it will only come on when you need that particular thing to function. That's why they call it serverless. And you don't need to disturb yourself about maybe how do I want to provision the server. Okay, like the first one we look at, SQL Server within an Azure VM. You have to first choose the configuration of the Azure VM. Is it a Windows Server 2022? What kind of configuration? All those things, all those ones, just it will run the SQL database when it's, so you, in terms of the server, you are not the one provisioning the server, so forget about it. Now, there's also the concept of what they call database transactional units. Now, the purchasing model will get into details with each of these things. So you can purchase it based on DTU or based on VCore. So for the database transactional unit, you talk about the basic DTU, you talk about the standard, you talk about the premium. So like I said, we are still going to look at the demo or the lab where we are going to provision. I told you we are going to provision an Azure SQL database, and we're also going to provision an SQL Server within an Azure VM. So all this, you are going to see some of this while we are provisioning it. Okay. And we'll definitely talk about the functionality of each of these. Okay. But just know that depending on okay, when we get there, we'll talk more about that. Okay. Now, for the single database deployment, that means you just need a database. Maybe your either DevOps or your developers in your organization, they've created an application and they need a database to work with that application. Okay. And they told you that, okay, they want this. They are creating the application, which is a cloud native application. So they want probably a database that is also cloud native. So you can decide that, okay, let's use Azure SQL database. Okay. So this is actually the simplest way you can go about this. And each database have its own full resources. Now, one thing about this one is that when you are creating single database, there's a catch here. During that process, a server will be provisioned. Of course, you will configure the server. And just like, okay, I think I've shut that one down. You can have one SQL server and different databases, but those databases could be for different applications. So each database will have its own set of resources. And of course, all the databases or each of the databases, they are different they are isolated. That's why they call this one single database deployment, even if you are deploying it within a particular server. Like I said, we'll get to understand this better when we do the hands-on on this, okay? And you can also configure each in terms of the service level, in terms of the cost, based on the individual database level. So the configuration takes place at the database level, okay? So, okay, I said something about Elastic Pool. So let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. So when we continue tomorrow, we are going to continue from this particular Azure SQL database. Okay. So this is what we are going to do. Please remind me, and let me see if I can note that down. So we'll start with provisioning an Azure VM in which we have an SQL server. Okay. We'll start with that. And then we'll now talk about this SQL database. And if we have time, we provision the SQL database. Okay? So I don't want to overwhelm us with much information today. So let me give room for question or contribution. So any question, any contribution?
Oh, Prof, I'm good from my end. I don't have any contribution apart from what you have said. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's do it this way. Can you just give me a quick recap of some of what we've talked about, and those you are able to, feel, okay, wow, this is something new. So just give me a quick recap.
Okay, so today I think we talk about the what will I say? The introduction of DP 300, Azure database admin, that is basically the cloud on its own. So we dive into the role of database administrator. We also look at some other roles within Azure, as in pertain to data. We talk about data analyst, data scientist, data engineer. We talk about AI. Then we now talk about the version of SQL Server and the edition. We talk about the backup, how we can back up on-prem in the cloud using URL and Azure backup, which we are going to do. Because I remember when you talk about it, I asked, are we going to practicalize this? Then we'll talk about Azure storage. You mentioned the premium SSD, premium standard SSD, Ultra Disk. Definitely Ultra Disk is the best because they use it more, especially in a large corporation like Amazon, definitely go for Ultra Disk. And we also talk about the availability group in Azure. Then talk about the the managed instance. Then we talk about the SQL database VM, SQL database Azure. So, and I asked what's the difference between the three of them, because sometimes it's a little bit confusing. So you were able to explain that the managed instance is is like a platform as a service, where the SQL database, Azure SQL database, is the infrastructure as a service, and the SQL Server Azure VM is also infrastructure as a service.
Okay, I think if I'm to grade you, I'll give you 11/10. I hope
That's
it's
a
not too
failure.
much. No, because no 11, that's you did exceedingly beyond, as in everything we've done, you walk through them one after the other. That's what I meant. So I'm
Oh,
giving you
thank you.
more mark than even because you mentioned everything we have done, and that's a good one. So Instructor Joyful, I don't know if you have anything you like to add.
Not really. I think he had a question, but I didn't get what his question was.
Oh,
Mr. Paul, you had a question,
prof,
right?
yes, prof already explained during
Oh, okay.
the class. Yeah, I
In the
think maybe,
network. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, prof explained
okay, no problem.
already.
No contribute.
That's
No,
good.
that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think you're welcome. So let's do it this way. Normally we are supposed to have 10 to 15-minute break, but I don't know, at times I get so super excited that I just
Yeah,
go on and forget.
I like it, right? But it's up to you.
Okay.
Whichever you do, I'm fine with it. Remember, I'm a student, and every
Okay.
instructor is different.
Okay.
So
No.
wherever the way you take me,
Right.
I'm ready. I'm
My
I'm ready.
preferences. Okay.
So because
Okay.
if
So
I'm
no,
not
don't
ready,
worry,
I
but
will
I'll
not be able
always.
to. Yeah.
No, that
No.
definitely.
We finished. It's 2 hours because we're supposed to take a break, but we decided not to. But that's okay with me.
Definitely. You're right. So go. Yeah. So no problem. So
Even
by
if
God's
it
grace,
is
we'll
an hour,
continue tomorrow.
even if
So
it
like
is
you
an
said,
hour, prof, and we were able to, you were able to achieve something. It's better than to
no
do
problem.
5 hours and not gaining anything.
No, you're right. So please kindly try and get those things.
Okay, sir.
I'm sure. Do you have a VM? Do you have VMware?
Yes, I do have a VMware. I can even share my screen
So
to show you. But I
okay,
need
just
to
share
do,
then. Let's see.
yeah. So
Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, just try and
yeah.
install it. But if you have any challenge, just drop it on the WhatsApp.
Okay,
Maybe
sir.
with a screenshot. Okay, and we'll help you. We'll get you sorted out.
All right, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much. So tomorrow
Thank you.
we'll continue once again. So take care and my regards to your family. So Instructor Joyful,
Likewise.
thank you so much for being a part of this. So see you tomorrow. So bye.
Okay, have a good one, everyone. Yeah, good night first.
Yes.